I squinted my eyes, trying to read what the screen was telling me. All the mixed colors were so confusing, and I had hardly learned how properly read those strange lines yet. I focused, trying to remember the letters I had learned in class and how to pronounce them. Waddle? I mumbled, not really understanding what the word meant, or if I had gotten it right. How did you get Mark confused with waddle? My big brother snatched the DS out of my hands. Apparently I didn't get the word right. Why are you even looking at my trainer card? I opened my mouth, having not really thinking of a response yet, but wanting to look smart. But he cut me off. Anyways, whatever. He fumbled around with the DS, pressing buttons in a mystical pattern that I couldn't imagine ever perfecting. After a minute, he gave it back to me. I eagerly clutched the game. The character was standing in the middle of the dirt road once more, ready for battle. I was relieved, as I didn't really know how to exit out of the trainer card, as my big brother put it. Just be sure not to mess anything up, idiot. I gasped in utter shock. He had said the I word. You aren't supposed to say that Mommy and Daddy aren't here. They can't hear me all the way at the grocery store. I can say all I want, he taunted. As he resumed playing his DSi, I scowled at his despicable behavior and instead turned my attention back to my game, or to be more precise, his game. I wasn't allowed to have a video game of my own yet, considering how I could barely read. All other thoughts pushed to the back of my mind. I started walking around in the patch of grass closest to me. I started thinking about how this Heart Gold game was so fun, even though I couldn't understand what anyone was saying. Just as I was thinking about how I could plead my parents to buy me my own game, the screen flashed, and I entered a battle. The Pokemon that appeared on the other side of the screen looked absolutely adorable. Plus it was pink, my favorite color. It sparkled, and I let out a squeal. I found a Whopper! My big brother sighed and shook his head. What am I going to do with you? Kind of manner. Then spoke, You Dumbo, it's Whooper, not Whopper. I huffed, whatever, and went back to the battle, eyes gleaming. I was controlling some ugly rat thing that had the number 10. The pink Whooper had the number 6. I clicked on the word that started with F, since I knew that would let me attack. Even though I didn't know how to pronounce it, alright, gotta use a not really strong attack to make it weak. I felt proud of myself for at least knowing a little bit on how to control the game. I clicked on Cut, since I didn't think it was tough. Plus I could actually read it. Ratface used Cut. He attacked the pink Whooper. Critical hit! I didn't know what the word meant, but I gasped when the pink Whooper's bar was at red. I knew it meant it was about to die. It attacked the rat with water gun, but it didn't hurt him much. I clicked on the bag, option, and looked around at all the choices until I found the one with the red and white ball picture. I selected it and threw it at the Whooper. Shake, shake, shake. Sweat started to pour down my forehead in suspense. Click. Yes! Yes! I jumped for joy when I had successfully caught my pink Whooper. I started moving my feet and waggling my arms, doing a little dance of my own. I made up as I went along. I only stopped when I dropped the DS, barely catching it in time before it collided with the floor. Hey, watch it! I told you to be careful with that. Man, you're so stupid at times. My brother criticized me. Well, sorry, I'm just really happy that I caught a pink Whopper. I retorted back. It's Whooper Wait, a pink one? They're supposed to be blue, not pink. Give me that. He reached out and snatched the game from me once more before I could react. His eyes grew wide as he stared at the game. Whoa, you actually caught a shiny. Yeah, it did sparkle when I found it. I want to name it Shelly, I shouted out to him. Despite him being able to hear me clearly enough, Shelly? That's a stupid name. But since you caught it, I guess just this once. Plus I can change it later. He pressed some more buttons, and in a flash, I had the game back. I grinned manically when I saw the pink creature standing behind the trainer. As I pressed the A button to talk to it, a heart popped about its head, and words appeared. Whoa, Shelly. Suddenly hugged you. I could only understand the word hugged, but just that sent me into a fit of giggles. She's so cute! I spoke aloud to myself. Who? Oh, that whopper? It's a boy, you know, my big brother informed me. Never looking up from his game, I froze in place. My giggles quickly dead. It's a boy? My brother mindlessly nodded his head as a response, still focused on his game. I looked back at the whooper and stared at it dumbly for a moment. Ew, that's so gross. It's a boy and it's pink. My brother seemed to just ignore me. I clicked on the button with the green ball, which switched the rat to the first slot instead of Shelly. I was utterly disappointed. My heart sunk. Shelly was so cute, but I didn't want it if it was a boy. I walked back into the grass and tried to find another one to catch, which hopefully would be a girl. This time the screen flashed. I entered another battle, but this time another whooper appeared. But instead of being pink and sparkly, it was blue and purple. This one looks like a boy. So it can be a boy. My logic seemed perfectly flawless at the time, so I decided to catch this one also. I made the ugly rat use cut again, which didn't hurt it as much last time. The whooper attacked with tail whip, which didn't do anything except for make the rat turn a different color afterwards. Afterwards, I immediately went to the bag and threw another red and white sphere at it. Shake, 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 click. I didn't dance or shout for joy this time, as this victory didn't seem sweet, but I still felt a bit pleased nonetheless. I handed the DS to my big brother, who unwillingly put down his DSi and accepted it. I caught another whooper, I informed him, and I wanted to be named, I hadn't really thought of a name to give him yet. My brother interrupted, all possible thoughts of concentration, though. It's a girl, not a boy. It took a moment for the words to set in. When they did, I started to fume in anger. What? But it looks like a boy! It has to be a boy! My big brother pressed some buttons on the DS, oblivious to my obvious unsatisfaction. Here, I named it Shelly just for you. Now don't bug me again. He told me strictly as he handed the game back. I unwillingly took it back. The new Shelly was standing behind the trainer, bobbing around happily. I talked to her, and a heart popped up above her head, along with the same words as before, with the other Shelly. Black. I like that rat better than this thing. I switched out the rat for new Shelly, happy to have those two things out of my sight. A wild Shelly appeared. A Pokemon appeared on the other side of the screen. That was most definitely not normal, as if someone had ripped apart different body segments of a normal and pink whooper and pieced them together with strings of skin. Half of its head was shiny, the other half normal. Pieces of its own flesh were tied around them to keep them held together. Same for its torso, feet, and tail. Not to mention, it was bloody. Look, we're everything you wanted. The letters were in blue and pink, making them a tad difficult to read. That didn't matter because I couldn't understand the sentence, and that mattered even less as I was too busy panicking at the sight before me. My fingers trembled, and my head started to get sweaty. After a moment of sheer panic, I remember the run button and how it lets you escape the battle. I pressed down on the button as my life depended on it, nearly bending the touchscreen. You don't love us? I quickly zoomed through the text without taking a second glance. It went back to the character in the main world, standing in the grass with the rat. I breathed heavily. The image of that whooper still fresh on my mind. My breath started to fog up in the screen, so I mindlessly wiped it off. I couldn't concentrate, and all my thoughts were uncontrollable fear. The DS started to slip out of my hands, but I quickly clutched it together. I decided I would try one of my techniques that I saved for occasions like this. I closed my eyes, scrunched up my face, and blocked everything that just happened out of my head. Instead, thought of cute things like kitties and puppies, and getting my own dog one day, and running around with it, and eating ice cream, and how sweet it is, and how drastically cools me off on a hot summer day, on how summer itself was just around the corner, and all the swimming I would be able to do. After a few minutes of thinking the things such as those, I felt a little better. Eventually, I felt good enough to open my eyes again and look at the game. I carefully opened my eyelid, a bit wary as to what I might see. The whooper from the previous battle was standing in front of the character, bouncing happily. Behind it lay the ugly rat. A bloody, torn-up mess. His head was ripped off, and crimson red matted his fur. It twitched and squirmed a little, but couldn't stand up. My heartbeat started to pick up again, as did my breathing. I talked to the Whooper. Look, we killed that ugly rat for you. The text is still in pink and blue. The only word that truly registered in my mind was killed. And that word scared me. I just stared blankly at the screen, fear crawling through my skin. You don't like it? We'll do better. I didn't even try to understand that sentence, as I wouldn't be able to if I tried. Relief unlike ever before washed over me when the screen faded to black. I sighed and brushed the sweat off my forehead. My heart skipped a beat when the screen on the DS flickered back into life. I had thought it was turned off. I examined the screen, and at first I didn't notice anything odd, besides the zombie Whooper standing next to the character, bouncing up and down, and a happy icon popped above its head. It walked into the grass, and the character followed behind. They walked around in circles for a few seconds until more words appeared. We killed all the Pokemon. No more annoying battles. There was that word again. Killed. I noticed there was some flecks of scarlet in the grass. And in one corner there was a Rattata, hidden in the grass, unmoving. The Whooper bounced around happily for a moment, then stopped. Still? We can do better. Then the screen went to black again, but turned back on before I could fully react. It still looked the same as before. The Whooper started to walk away, and the character followed. A couple of steps they encountered a green hat on the ground with a dark red stain on it. The two continued, walking down the dirt path, finding more hats, shoes, and even a human limb or two. Eventually they reached the outskirts of Violet City. No more trainers either. It ran into the city, and my character ran along behind. Inside the town, there were several blood splatters along the walls and buildings. The Whooper and the character ran into the orange building, which was the place where you healed your Pokemon at. I could care less, still stricken from all I was seeing. Inside was no one. Not even the pink nurse lady. Of course, more scarlet red there to add to the atmosphere. No more waiting to heal your Pokemon. You don't even need Pokemon anymore. I checked the character's Pokemon, and sure enough, they were all gone. I exited out, and the Whooper was bouncing up and down cheerfully next to the trainer. If anything, a little too enthusiastic. It ran out of the building. The character followed behind. They ran across the town to the blue store building, where you bought items. Inside, shelves and items were toppled over. By a strand of ultimate luck, the guy you talked to actually buy items was still alive. I was prompted to do so by a nudge from the Whooper. I hesitantly walked the character over to talk to him, a bit more worried what would happen if I didn't. He didn't greet me, just took me straight into the item selection. All the items were free. I didn't choose any. I wasn't really in any mood for shopping at the time. I exited out. Whooper started bouncing around. Free items. No more money needed. It ran around in circles, then practically flew out the door. Before the character could move, the screen faded to black. It took a few minutes for it to come back on. When it did, the character was still standing in the store. The Whooper ran back in, jumped up and down, and then ran back out, the character following behind this time. Outside, it was total chaos. Different buildings and landmarks from all different sections of the game were together in that one city. Colors clashed and glitched squares were everywhere. Textures mixed and welded together, making it difficult to tell one surface feature from another. Everyone is in one place. No need to walk around. The Whooper ran in circles around the character, then abruptly stopped, an exclamation point popping above its head. The screen faded to black once more, but came back even faster. This time there was only darkness. The character and Whooper being the only things visible. There's nothing. No need to worry about anything. It bounced up and down with a happy icon. Perfect. It ran all around the character, spinning, jumping. My hands shook. So did the DS. My thoughts were slowly starting to connect again, and I was able to focus more clearly. My brain finally was able to process everything that just happened. That was when a warm tear rolled down my cheek, and I started to sniffle. The Whooper stopped its joyous little dance and turned to the character. You still don't love us? I could care less about what it said as more tears started cascading down my face. In a few moments, I was all out crying. Before I knew it, the DS was snatched out of my hands. My big brother was looking at me in a worried expression. "What happened? What the heck are you crying for?" I tried to respond, but my words only came out as sobs. He groaned, and instead turned his attention to his DS. The one I had been playing. He pressed the power button, as it was apparently turned off. He messed with it for a couple of minutes, and with a shrug, turned it back off. "I don't know what you did, but you better stop crying all over the place before Mom and Dad get back home. I don't want to get in trouble for something I didn't do." He turned back to his DSi and left me sitting on the floor, a sobbing mess. After a while, I was able to mostly regain control of myself. I was still sniffling a little, but fairly good overall. Eventually, our parents came home from the store. I don't think I had ever before been so excited to see them in my life. I ran up to them and gave them a big hug. "Whoa, didn't think you'd be so excited to see us," my dad chuckled. "Hey, we got you something," my mom teased. My ears immediately perked up. I needed something to cheer me up afterward. "You wanted a video game of your own for a little while, so..." my dad chimed in. "We got you this." My mom reached into the grocery bag. I jumped up and down, eager to see what the gift I was receiving. She dramatically pulled out whatever it was and turned out to be Pokemon Heart Gold. I screamed my lungs out and fled from the kitchen. I ran into my room and slammed the door shut, causing a picture in the hallway to fall and break. My parents stared back at me, completely bewildered. "Well, that went well," my dad muttered. "Maybe she wasn't so excited she couldn't handle it?" my mom offered weakly. From the living room, I burst out laughing, having watched the whole scene. "Huh, looks like one extra game for me then." I spoke to no one in particular except for myself. I reached for my own DS, feeling a bit grateful that my little sister obviously didn't want her heart gold, as she would have to use my DS and I didn't want her breaking it. I started to play my own heart gold, to double check and make sure she hadn't messed up anything. When it started up, a pink Wooper was bouncing playfully behind my Pokemon trainer. "Oh, that Shelly thing. I'll screw around with that later," I muttered to myself. I switched out Shelly number 1 for my Raticate. But when I went back to the overworld, Shelly number 2 was idling behind my trainer. A bit confused, but mostly irritated, I switched out Shelly 2 for my Raticate. This time it finally worked. I started walking down the route, but a text box stopped me in mid-step. "Shelly has run away. Shelly has run away." Hey, what gives? I checked my Pokemon and both Shellys were missing. Sighing in frustration, I exited out and started walking down the route again. I walked into a patch of tall grass by accident and the screen flashed. A battle started.